I'm Tandy Culpepper, and in this episode of The Hollywood Beat, we'll hear from a woman who's a clinical psychologist and also a hypnotherapist. Here's my interview with Dr. Nancy Irwin. Dr. Irwin, thank you for speaking with me today.
A pleasure, Tandy.
So I want to start out by asking, we know because of the intro to this segment that you are both a clinical psychologist and a hypnotherapist. What do people seek your services out for on the whole?
I treat over 100 different issues. I specialize in trauma recovery and addictions. That being said, most addictions have trauma behind it. So my favorite thing to treat is the trauma, which usually addictions are a symptom of underlying unresolved trauma. But outside of that, with hypnosis, with the lighter things, other than smoking cessation, alcohol, all sorts of substances, I also treat test anxiety. People sitting for the bar exam, that's huge. Real estate board exams, national psychologist board exams, CPA, anything you can name, SATs for kids. I also treat a lot of athletes on the lighter side to have more focus so they can make the shot or the stroke or the swing that they do want to make, as opposed to keeping the yips from achieving that maximum performance. I also do a lot of sleep disorders, weight management, which I've always had to manage my weight, so it thrills me to help set people free from a negative mindset with that. I guess that's a lot of sexual disorders and dysfunctions. I guess that's a typical day of my office.
Oh my gosh. Well, you made me think. I think there was a book written several decades back called Inner Tennis. I think that's what it was called, by a sports psychologist.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, Martina Navratilova was one, that would step on the court and they not only had the opponent on the other side of the net, they were battling themselves as well.
Those negative voices at a crucial moment. If you're standing there on the free throw line and you go, okay, don't blow this free throw, you will. You
Yeah.
gotta focus on swishing it through the net.
The power of positive thinking. Norman Vincent Peale.
Imaging, focusing, visualizing what you do want. Never mention what you don't want, because your unconscious cannot process a negative.
Good to know. Your
Yeah.
unconscious cannot process a negative. Wow.
No, if people go, okay, I'm not going to eat the donuts, I'm not going to smoke, I'm not going to date any more toxic men. Yeah, you will. You'll eat it, smoke it, date it. You have to focus on only breathing in fresh air, on eating healthy foods 95% of the time, and attracting men that are non-toxic, that share your values and goals. Never mention what you don't want, because the unconscious can't. How do you see a picture of a don't?
This is true. I had a therapist many years back who told me, I got into therapy with her because of a very toxic relationship with a man who from the get-go, there were signals. And Maya Angelou famously said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Right.
I did not go with my first impression. And your first impression, as my mother has very often said, is always going to be right.
Yeah, it is.
Whether you're taking a test or whatever, if she always said, if you, whatever the first thing that comes into your head is probably going to be the correct answer. Don't talk yourself out of it. Well, my therapist said that I was attracted to men who were not good for me. So is that, she also said I was codependent. Are there a lot of people who share those traits with me?
Oh,
Where
God,
you,
yes. At least 50%.
how do
And I
you
think
fix that?
it's completely possible, and this is a large part of what we do in therapy. You're talking about attachment styles. About 50, and this gets laid in place very early on, before age 3. But the good news is they're all repairable. So about 50% of us babies were fortunate enough to become securely attached, meaning one or both parents were there with the breast, the bottle, the soothing arms, and that spills over into intimate relationships later. We have a solid foundation. We trust enough of our needs are going to get met, and we know we're lovable. Oh, we'll get dumped and rejected, but we bounce back because after, we're not devastated. The other 50% of us babies become insecurely attached. And these break down into a few subsets. One is an anxious baby. And this is what you probably are referring to as codependency. These are people who are afraid to be alone. They can't be single. They
Oh,
only stay
boy.
in a bad relationship until they have another one waiting in the wings.
Boy, did you hit that nail on the head
Oh,
there
yeah,
for me.
it's so fascinating. They're constantly texting. Oh, I called him 10 minutes ago. He hasn't called me back. Who's he having sex with? So they're freaking out. They're highly anxious and need to be attached, or they feel unlovable. They don't trust that they're good enough alone and they're lovable and it's worth the wait. And then there's avoidant babies, and avoidants usually were neglected, and they learned very early on, I don't need anybody. Nobody was there for me. Oh, they'll get in relationships, but there's a major barrier in the way. Like their partner will be married to someone else, or live in another country, or there's an addiction or something else in the middle of the road that blocks a real path to intimacy. And then there's a combo deal, anxious avoidant. These are babies who probably had a lot of mixed messages and chaos in the house growing up, addictions, mental illness, domestic abuse, etc. So they want to trust, and then they get scared and pull back. So it's kind of a back and forward thing. It's fascinating to determine through therapy or by reading. I'll mention 2 great self-help books. That's a great jump starter for this, to increase your awareness and see how you identify, and then work in therapy to learn to create a secure attachment. And one book is called Attached, and that's by a wonderful psychiatrist named Dr. Noah Levine. And then there's also another book, same information, slightly different terms, but that is called Bad Boyfriends, and it's by Jeb Kennison.
Interesting. My therapist also told me that we are attracted to our family of origin. Do you agree?
Oh, of course. And with straight people, with women, daddy's our first boyfriend. With little boys, mommy's their first girlfriend. So if you're gay, change the pronouns. But yeah, those are our first templates for intimacy. And good or bad, most of us will follow that.
Wow. A lot of people out there probably have these kinds of problems, but have not sought out help. And there, in some places, is a stigma associated with anyone knowing that you're in therapy, not here in California.
Exactly.
But we would hope that, I mean, you take your car in for a tune-up. Why wouldn't you treat yourself the same?
Hey, you go to get a medical checkup every year. Why not get this checked up frequently? Yeah,
Exactly.
it's very
Exactly.
freeing.
I read a story recently in the New York Times about Ashley Judd, and we'll get back to her in a moment. You treat celebrities here in the Los Angeles area.
Oh, I do. Not
And
exclusively, of course, but
no, not
yeah.
exclusively, but they are part of your clientele. Do celebrities have issues that are unique to being in the public eye, or do they have the same issues we have, or is it a combo play?
It's a combo, they're human. They have relationship issues. They have attachment issues. They have fears of success or failure. In fact, the higher they are, the more, the more famous they are, the more they have to lose. So I call it celebrity stress. There is a certain expectation, an enormous amount of stress that can come from reaching a level of notoriety. But yeah, they worry about their weight. They worry about, yeah, aging, of course, is a
Oh my
huge
gosh,
one.
yes,
Oh
yes,
God, yeah,
especially for
especially for the
women.
women. Yes, of course.
And people are always, I know this personally, is that you go, well, I've gone into interviews for jobs that would have been even more high profile than the one I had, having been in broadcast news for so many years. And you can psych yourself out. And or there's also, you get the job, and I have thought they're going to realize that I'm an imposter, that I'm not, I'm bluffing my way through this, because I have had jobs in the past where I've thought, okay, so I talked my way into this. Now can I actually deliver the goods?
Right, right. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about is the imposter syndrome, and not just the
Oh,
letter.
it's called that?
Sure. Or the fraud, the saboteur, same thing. And I always, and a lot of celebrities have it. And again, you can see how the more successful they are, especially a really sensitive person is more attuned to, or at risk of developing this. But I got to tell you, I always say, and I just wrote a piece on this recently, keep it.
Keep it?
Feeling like an imposter, embrace that insecurity, because you know what? That keeps you humble, that keeps you down to earth and committed to excellence. It's the
Oh,
opposite of arrogance. Thinking I've arrived, I'm done, resting on my laurels. Absolutely.
that is so interesting.
I
So
work
you
with,
can take a weakness and make it a strength.
there's a great security in insecurity. I work with a film director who, Oscar winner, everything. Inevitably, before every premiere, this person will go, here's the one where they're going to find me out that I'm a big fraud. And I go, uh-huh, right. Never happens. And now I say, keep that attitude, because that keeps you pumping out these incredible pieces of masterpieces. You're humble. You're committed to excellence. You're not getting lazy.
Oh gosh, I
I
would
know,
love to know who that is.
can't tell that, but it doesn't even matter, because
Right.
the bigger people are, the more that they are going to suffer some insecurities.
When people like
Hence
that,
all the addictions.
oh yeah, when people like that come to you, high profile people in the arts, um, is it word of mouth?
Usually referral. Yeah. Yeah.
We're at an interesting crossroads. I wonder, and without naming names, do any of your clients, are they involved in the writers or SAG-AFTRA strikes?
Absolutely. And my heart goes out to them. I work with a lot of screenwriters, actors who are successful, but some of them are raising families. It's not like they're bazillionaires like the superstars.
Right.
So a lot of them, yeah, I wouldn't say they're just making ends meet by any means, but you know what? They've worked so hard. They've arrived at a certain level. They want to start thinking, okay, I can breathe, I can relax a bit. And then this happens. So yeah, no, it's my heart absolutely breaks for people at every level. And I have
I
a lot of
had
friends in the industry who are members of Yahtzee. So if there's no shows going on, they're not working.
exactly. We forget that it's not just the writers and the actors, it's the grips and the stagehands and the lighting
Makeup
directors.
artists, hairstylists, the
Right.
wardrobes, all of these people, they have families. They have
Yep.
car notes. I know, it's so sad. I just hope that this will get resolved soon.
Okay, going to back to Ashley Judd, who may or may not be one of your clients. There was a
It's not, so we can take that off the table.
okay, good. I read an article in the New York Times. You know what? I'll send you a link because I think you'll find it interesting.
Sure.
She has been going through a hellacious year since her mother. I think it's safe to say that she took her own life.
Yeah.
She suffered from a crippling depression, and Ashley has been seeing someone, and she's been using something called EMDR. Is
Sure.
that right?
Yeah.
So I know you use that, do you not?
Extensively.
What is that all about?
It's a trauma modality. It's been around for about 50 years. And frankly, it seems pretty weird and out there, but it's not, because the greatest trauma expert in the world, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, prescribes it. He's a psychiatrist, the world's leading trauma expert. And it's, in a nutshell, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a series of eye movements where you feel like you're watching a tennis match. You don't move your head, only your eyes. There's something about that movement that goes through the optic nerve to the brain that scrambles the encoding. Now, we can't erase a memory, but we can delineate, or we can dissipate the charge that a traumatic memory has on the body. Because trauma gets stored in the brain like a block of ice. So all of our psychological energy keeps hitting up against that block. This is why you frequently hear traumatized people say, I can't get past it. Literally, they can't. EMDR sort of melts that block of ice away, so you can talk about the trauma like a journalist would, or in a narrative form, without the charge, the crippling charge in your body. And best of all, you reprocess it. The R is you get to take a lesson learned from it. Because no matter what we go through, there's always a lesson to be learned.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Even when you make a terrible mistake or commit a terrible faux pas,
Yeah.
You can come away with a lesson. If you don't learn from it, then you're
Right.
kind of beyond help.
Right.
Let's talk about hypnotherapy.
Sure.
Can anyone be hypnotized? Okay, let me try that one again.
Hypnotized.
Can anyone be hypnotized? Say that 3 times fast.
Yes, because we all pass through the hypnagogic state a couple of times a day anyway.
How so?
It's simply, we wake up in the hypnopompic state and we pass through it on our way to sleep at night. Nobody's fully awake and then bam, fully asleep. There's a few minutes, a passageway from going from one state to the other, waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night. So anyone who can go to sleep can be hypnotized. Anyone who can receive a massage or have sex or any sort of touch can be hypnotized. There are people who can't handle that. They're so severely traumatized, or their trust is broken down so completely, they wouldn't even dare want to close their eyes. There are also some people who are so mentally disabled that they could not experience hypnosis. That's very, very few people. Or there's some people who only come in here to prove, here's another thing that's never going to work for me. People who have an extremely almost nihilistic personality point of view. And it doesn't work for them because they refuse to let anything help them. Again, all of that is a very, very, very small, like maybe 0.001% of the population. Have I seen some? Yeah, 2 or 3 in my 20 years in the business. Most people come in here, they're paying money, they're making a commitment, and they want the change. So I explained to them how it works and that they are really the agent of change. I'm just assisting it like a teacher. Student does all the work, but I show them how to shift the mindset. And then by relaxing them in hypnotic trance, which is simply being in between fully awake and fully asleep, where your brain waves slow down, just like you're being massaged, having sex, enjoying a movie, meditating, praying. You're not out of it. You're not going, yes, master, I'm not making you do anything. You're simply receiving the positive suggestions of how you do want to eat right, or breathe in nothing but fresh air, or improve your golf swing, or ask a girl out, or be able to fly in a plane and remain calm and neutral and understand what turbulence is, or to be able to walk into the bar exam and know, I'm as prepared as I can possibly be. And
or to take the stage after not being on stage for 13 years and be the lead in the musical. Been there, done that.
There you go.
Went for hypnosis and it worked.
Absolutely.
So you've written 2 books.
Mm-hmm.
What are they?
One is called U-Turn, and just for those listening, it's a visual YOU turn. I can hold it up. Changing Direction in Midlife. You can read it at any age. I specifically wrote it for midlifers because middle age gets a really bad rap. And I changed careers at age 44. I stopped what I was previously doing, went back and got my doctorate, and voila, couldn't be happier.
At 44.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So can you read a bit from it?
Sure. It's actually a collection of over 40 stories of people over 40 who made amazing life changes. Some were by default, meaning they had an injury or an addiction caught up with them. They got dumped, fired. And then there were others like me who changed by their own choice. I was bored. I knew there was something else. There was something missing. I was meant for something more. So it's a whole mixture of, people that, of everyday people, and also some, well, a couple are now celebrities, which is exciting. But I have all these stories, and I also have a lot of self-help tips to help you move through any blind spots you may encounter on your road in life. And one of my favorite ones is tip number 1. Don't wait until you're not scared. You'll be dead. Most of us are scared all the time. Change does not require fearlessness, but it does require courage. Courage is not being fearless. It's doing what is right in the face of fear. Without fear, there'd be no courage.
That is really true.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just skating along, not achieving the next step.
Exactly. And then I go on to say, realize it's much scarier to stay where you are than to go for your goal. Anticipation is generally scarier than reality. And then I have another tip, no shoulds allowed. Many people torture themselves with, I should have X by now, or I should have done Y by now. As the late, great, my favorite psychologist, Dr. Albert Ellis said, stop shoulding all over yourself. He also said, stop masturbating. For those haunted with the I must do blank, I must be blank, replace should with I choose to, blah, 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 and see how many possibilities open up for you. For example, I chose to be a stand-up comedian for 9 years, and then I chose to make a change to become a therapist. I always say the road between comedy and mental health is very short indeed. So this sort of mindset that it's a choice allows you to take responsibility for your actions and frees you to make a new choice.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Makes perfect sense. And the second book is called?
That is called The Roadmap to Success. I was invited by Dr. Deepak Chopra to contribute. So there's a couple of other people that
The Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
How did you two cross paths?
It was through a publisher for my other book, and he was putting together this book, and he invited Dr. Ken Blanchard, who's a motivational speaker and a best-selling author as well, to contribute to the roadmap to success and delineate some business strategies and a healthier mindset to create success. And one of the questions he asked was, do we get more resistant as we get older? Because see, that's why I wrote U-Turn. I hated that there's such a popular myth, this misconception that you're too old to change. That just drives me crazy. So one of the questions this book was addressing is, do we get more resistant? Is it harder to change as we get older? And I say, well, we do because the older we get, the more ingrained our patterns are. But there's a muscle memory, and there's also brain muscle memory. Your brain has been trained just like recording sound onto a tape. Records were used this way before cassette tapes and CDs and now MP3s, but the accurately shaped cutting stylus cut a precise spiral groove in the LP. Well, the brain does the same thing with neural pathways. Well, neuroplasticity, and I'm sure your readers are familiar with that, the brain is very plastic. Neuroplasticity is a lifelong ability of the brain to reorganize neural pathways based on new experiences. This means we can change. I say we can always change Pavlov's dog. We can retrain him. We think change is hard when really, in fact, it is not. It might be a bit more difficult as we age because, again, our patterns are longer. But around the age 30, the brain has already begun to have some cognitive decline, extremely small and incremental. But yeah, we peak between like 25 and 30. I always say after that it's downhill, but not really. It decreases very, very slowly, especially if one exercises and keeps that neuroplasticity working and has a healthy lifestyle and surrounds themselves with a positive support system, stimulating work, self-care, and all the other things that go into a healthy lifestyle. This allows us to tape over the old, worn out grooves in our record and create new ones for success.
So you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Absolutely. If you want to, you have to want to.
What is the one topic or issue or problem? I hate to say problem because that sounds so negative. You use the word modality.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one that gives you the most satisfaction?
It's hard to say. It's usually a compilation because I do a lot of CBT work.
Excuse me, Alexa, stop.
I do a lot of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of rational emotive behavioral therapy, Gestalt, of course, hypnosis, EMDR, and probably a couple other things that I'm not, ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. which is basically mindfulness. There's something that works for everyone. I don't believe in cookie cutters. So I always tell people, you're the boss. We're going to go with what works for you. Here are all the different skills I have. Let's try them all and see what works.
What should I have asked, or what? Alexa is still going to town. Alexa, stop. What should I have asked, or what would you like to impart that we didn't touch upon? Anything?
Well, again, I love reinvention and people embracing their life and not giving into the myth of aging. It's too late. I shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah, I always love to quote, in fact, I quote him in my book. Satchel Paige said, "How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were?"
Oh, Satchel Paige.
That allows us to be young at heart and constantly curious and exploring and increasing our knowledge and being a curious adventurer on the pathway of life. That's the way I choose to live.
I think that's a very good way to live for anyone. Dr. Nancy Irwin, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Tandy. I want to see everybody live a life they love.
You can reach Dr. Irwin by phone at 310-225-2882. That's 310-225-2882. Or by email at info@drnancyirwin.com. That's info@drnancyirwin.com.